The rain was relentless that Friday evening, blurring the lines between the known and the hidden. Carson Reed sat in his car, legs trembling with a mix of fear and anger. The sense of wet pavement and iron lingered in the air as he glanced toward the hotel entrance across the street. It was a nondescript establishment, perfect for a secret rendezvous. His heart raced as he fixated on those double-glass doors, waiting for Amelia, his wife of 10 years, to emerge. He still remembered the quiet days when their lives spiraled into a content rhythm, sharing casual conversations over morning coffee, laying plans for their future, their businesses intertwining in mutual support. But with each passing day, a gnawing suspicion crept into his gut, the inkling that something was off. Lately, she had been spending countless hours away from home, buried in meetings. Carson, a man who had built a successful consulting business from the ground up, was used to building bridges, not walls. He felt like he was losing his wife to a shadow. Her lateness that day felt different. It was intended. He didn't need to sneak a peek at her phone. He noticed how her demeanor changed whenever he broached the subject. The misplaced smiles, the perfume that lingered, and that introspective gaze that flickered over his shoulder. Each sign was like a puzzle piece, falling into a clearly defined picture of betrayal. Hours passed as he fidgeted in his seat, nervously laughing at the warped reflection in the rearview mirror. Just as he convinced himself to drive away, Amelia appeared, her laughter carrying above the steady rhythm of the rain. But it wasn't her laughter that caught his ear. It was how it resonated, from deep within her chest, resonating with an intimacy he hadn't felt from her in ages. The sight of her growing closer to an unfamiliar man, a name Carson would later learn was Jason, shattered whatever remnants of trust still resided in his heart. He watched, wood-like, as they embraced, their bodies melding together in a casual grace that had become foreign to him. Dive deeper than the warm whispers and hidden touches, he could detect the electricity, the insecure pauses, the kind that solidified a romantic connection, rather than extinguishing it. Carson's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. The world, his world, spiraled into chaos. He had fought tooth and nail for everything they had built together, a home, a life, a stable haven for their twin daughters. Yet all of it hinged now on the uncertainty of one moment that fractured that stability. Rage and humiliation forged a new path through the overgrown garden of his thoughts. He flung his driver's door open, rain colliding against him as he felt the weight of a revelation taking form. Every moment of kindness he had shown Amelia, every compromise and late-night discourse, now felt like rough-hewn shackles. His voice, usually controlled and serene, crumbled under the weight of his broken trust. "Amelia!" He charged toward them with a fierce intensity, heart racing, each step echoing a finality he could scarcely comprehend. She turned, disbelief etched across her features, and Jason's mouth opened in shock. "Carson, she began, but he cut her off, feeling the venom seep through every syllable. "You think I wouldn't find out? How long has this been going on?" He spat the words, and the bewildering sense of betrayal ignited his volcanic emotions. The silence of the moment stretched like a tightrope, desperate and unruly. Amelia looked pale, while Jason visibly recoiled, confusion merging with fear. The air felt electric, stinging Carson's lungs as disbelief twisted into anger. He had expected a revelation, a confrontation steeped in dignity, but none could have prepared him for the strange satisfaction that coursed through him in that arena of public betrayal. Summoning the last of his self-control, Carson unleashed fury tempered with shark-like precision. This was not a mere confrontation, but a construction of a justice he could calculate. "You're just my roommate now," he declared coldly, eyes ablaze. "Try not to embarrass yourself." Before either of them could respond, he turned sharply on his heel, feeling powerful for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. He hadn't simply been meant to bear this quiet betrayal. He could dismantle the very foundations of their connection and leave them gasping for breath. As he walked away, the rain pouring insistently, drenching him, an exhilarating mix of liberation and rage propelled him forward. it wouldn't end like this. Back in the sanctuary of his vehicle, Carson had never felt more alive. The adrenaline coursing through his veins ignited a firestorm within him, a newfound determination. Amelia had exposed the fragility of their life together, but he would not let her tear him apart. Instead, he vowed to burn down the carefully crafted facade they had built, leaving only ash in its wake. He flipped open his laptop, fingers dancing across the keyboard with a fierce precision, setting into motion a plan of retribution. Carson's meticulous nature had always served him well in business, and now it would become his weapon in this war. He gathered every piece of evidence he could find, piecing together the shards of their once unbreakable bond. He detailed her spending habits, scrutinized bank statements, and documented her late-night absences. There were dinners, hotel stays, and expenses incurred under the guise of work, the patterns meticulously woven into a web of betrayal. Unbeknownst to Amelia, her world was about to collapse, and Carson was the arbiter of that destruction. Each day became a new opportunity for tactical strikes against the new life they had built together. He methodically stopped the flow of funds, monitoring their joint accounts until he could orchestrate the perfect financial blitz. She didn't realize how easy it was to box her into a corner. They had pooled their resources, and now he would reclaim what was his. The notification pings from his bank account made him feel powerful, righteous even. Every transaction that reversed, every dollar he reclaimed felt like another feather added to his wings. He was no longer simply a victim, but a conductor of this painful symphony, each note ringing out with a clarity that shattered their shared illusion. The more he pressed on, the clearer it became that destruction could be a catalyst for his own rebirth. As days turned into weeks, the narrative surrounding Carson began to shift. Friends and family soon entered the fray, concerned about Amelia's increasingly erratic behavior. Carson told them she had taken a turn towards selfishness, becoming distant and unreliable, leading them to believe their marriage was crumbling due to her infidelity. Their sympathy and concern unwittingly coalesced into a weapon, bolstering Carson's image as the noble husband who, despite his sorrow, would rise to the occasion. The moment to unleash his fury was near. The company holiday party loomed on the calendar, an ideal setting for the spectacle he had deftly crafted. It was an event where friends and colleagues would gather, allowing Carson the perfect audience to both expose his wife's infidelity and display his unyielding strength. He plotted every detail, envisioning the panic and humiliation that would transpire. He would orchestrate Amelia's public disgrace like a maestro, unveiling a hauntingly beautiful symphony for the first time, leaving an imprint that would echo for years. On the day of the event, Carson's veneer of calm was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. He arrived early, greeting colleagues and laughing at jokes they exchanged, a well-practiced glow of charm about him. Amelia, unaware, was still cloaked in her self-imposed oblivion, ignoring the signs that had begun to ripple through their social circle. As the evening unfurled, Carson watched her closely through the throng of laughter and chatter. He could see her animated smile, the warmth in her gaze directed toward the very people who would soon become the instruments of her downfall. It was time to play his hand. With the softest of whispers, he approached the microphone as the speeches wound down, ignoring the sudden silence that enveloped the room. "If I could have everyone's attention, please." Carson's voice broke through the clattering of dishes and laughter, capturing the attention of guests who now turned toward him, curious. Amelia, standing 8 feet away, froze, her smile faltering. He sensed her unease. Perfect. "I have something important to share with all of you tonight," he began, the gravity in his tone causing the room to grow heavy. "Sometimes, love can blind us to the truth, but I believe we owe each other honesty." Carson's pulse quickened as he locked eyes with Amelia, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her face, but he pressed on. "It has been a journey, this marriage, but I stand before you heartbroken." "Amelia, You have not just broken our vows, you have broken my trust in our family. The man you've been seeing, his name is Jason." Gasps echoed through the gathering, the collective shock palpable. Carson's gaze never faltered. He was relishing every moment. "I have proof. All the late nights, dinners, hotel expenses, all documented." He took a breath to steady his voice as their friends began to murmur, laughter dying like embers on a cold night. "And now, I have decided that she is just my roommate. I am reclaiming what is rightfully mine, the house, the children, everything." The room erupted in disarray, co-workers whispering frantically, glancing from Amelia to Carson, who stood resolutely digging deeper into the devastation he had orchestrated. Tears formed in her eyes, but he didn't relent. The power coursed through him. The thrill of control now surpassed the bitterness. "Enjoy your new life with Jason. I hope you both understand what it means to live with the shame of betrayal, the shame of being cast aside as the community turns their backs." As the murmurs intensified into chaotic whispers, Carson dropped the mic and turned, striding away from the gathering. In that moment, he had extinguished Amelia's light, dimmed by the shadows of her misdeeds. A final glimpse over his shoulder showed him her stunned expression. Tears streaked down her face, friends edging away, some even shaking their heads in disbelief. His heart raced not out of regret, but exhilaration. He finally controlled the wreckage of his life. It was a triumphant destruction marked by self-respect, clarity, and a fierce hunger for independence. This was only the beginning. In the days that followed the explosive revelation, the remnants of Carson's life reshaped into something powerful and unrecognizable. News of Amelia's betrayal spread like wildfire through their community, a small town where gossip traveled faster than the speed of light. Friends he once considered allies all echoed sentiments of betrayal and disbelief, aligning themselves with him not out of pity, but out of respect for how openly he had confronted the pain. He had dismantled the illusions of their marriage, shattering every notion of normality. Conversations at work evolved, with colleagues rallying around him, offering support, validation, and the occasional disdain for Amelia's actions. She became the pariah, the infamous subject of hushed conversations at dinner parties. Carson reveled in the shifts. He had become the protagonist of his own redemption story, leading from a position of unyielding strength. Gone were the days he clung to the emotional shackles of a toxic relationship. Instead, he invested his energy in rebuilding his life and fortifying the boundaries he had once neglected. Each day, he rose with a purpose, strategizing the path to recovery, not only financially, but also emotionally. The legal proceedings began shortly after. With every court date, Carson gained momentum. The attorney he hired, a fierce woman named Linda, was relentless, matching his commitment to dismantling the life Amelia had tried to usurp. She was not just a lawyer. She was a partner in Carson's war on the remnants of their shared life. "Let's expose every dime she has squandered, every ounce of contempt she harbors against you," Linda asserted, her gaze unwavering. Carson could see it in her eyes. She understood the gravity of betrayal and the need for justice. He handed her the meticulously collected evidence, watching her brows knit together in thought as she reviewed and planned their attack. Amelia's emotional reasoning won't hold up in court. "She's made her bed," Linda said with a gleam in her eyes. "Now it's time for her to lie in it." In the corners of his mind, Carson felt bad for the woman he once adored, but that guilt was smothered beneath a blanket of righteousness. He had become unapologetically fierce, fiercely protective, not just of himself, but of his daughters, Ellie and Sarah. They were the only pieces of his former life worth salvaging, and he focused on creating a stable environment for them amid the storm. On one particular Saturday afternoon, while the girls were playing in the backyard, Carson sat at the patio table, the summer sun kissing his skin. It felt surreal to watch them laugh and frolic without the shadow of their former tumultuous family life lurking over them. Yet, He knew that darkness wasn't entirely swept away. Amelia had begun to fight back, not in the courtroom, but through emotional manipulation. "Carson, can we talk about the girls?" A voice sparked the tranquility, making his skin prickle. Amelia stood at his periphery, looking fragile yet defiant, the remnants of her previous control clearly jostling for purchase. Though she had morphed into an outsider, the moment she locked eyes with him, he felt the familiar tug of old memories. But he refused to go there. "You know why we can't. You've burned that bridge," he replied coolly, not even turning to face her, focusing instead on the girls as they dashed across the grass, blissfully unaware of the tumult their parents had created. "Please, they need me. I love them." Amelia's voice cracked, and Carson felt a fleeting flicker of pity for her. But recalling her betrayal extinguished that yet again. "Love isn't about manipulation, Amelia. Love is built on trust. You've lost both," he bit back, his voice cold and unyielding. "Right now it's about what's best for the girls, and they deserve stability." "I was wrong," she pleaded, the tears welling in her eyes. "I made a mistake. Can't you give me another chance?" The question hung in the air like poison, and Carson turned finally, meeting her gaze with a simmering intensity. "I can't. I won't. You made your choice. I'm not looking back." He saw the anguish flood her face, but quickly replaced pity with resolve. It was not just Amelia he was setting boundaries with. It was a promise he made to himself, to guard against future vulnerabilities. As the weeks unraveled, the courtroom battles began. Standing before the judge, Carson felt the familiar pang of memories twist painfully within him. Amelia sat across the room, a shadow of the woman he had once loved, her face pale and eyes red, silent accusations echoing from her downturned lips. The hearing began, and Linda laid out the evidence with precision. Witness testimonies from friends, colleagues, and even their daughter's teachers painted a vivid tapestry of their lives. What unfolded was not just a plea for custody, but a revelation of how deeply intertwined love could become with betrayal and financial deceit. He detailed how Amelia's emotional absence had compromised their family unit, highlighting how her connection with Jason had effectively severed the bond they once held. "Children thrive on love and stability, Your Honor. I believe I can provide that for them." The judge nodded, noting Carson's impeccable track record as both businessman and father. After hours of painstaking testimonies, the verdict was near. Carson realized with every word, he was not solely fighting for money or possessions. He was reclaiming his dignity and the right to carve out a peaceful life for his daughters. When it concluded, the judge granted him primary custody, detailing a visitation schedule for Amelia with strict guidelines. As he left the courtroom, pride swelled in Carson's chest. He had fought for his family and won. But even as he reveled in that victory, Amelia's cold gaze burned in his memory. She was refusing to accept the verdict, desperate, unchanged. His heart remained heavy as the weight of the reality of her actions set in. He may have won this battle, but the war would be far from over. He would stand vigilant, ready for whatever cruel game she might devise next. Days turned into weeks, and as the echoes of that courtroom faded, Carson's singular focus continued on health and stability. Amelia, now a fixture of irrationality, lingered in the shadows of his victory, but he felt no fear, only an unwavering resolve to shield his daughters from the fallout of their mother's indifference. The shift in power was palpable. He had dismantled their false truths, and now he was free to reconstruct his future. The community's laughter rang through his home, Anna and Sarah giggling over some nonsense they concocted. Carson's heart swelled, while Amelia tried to conjure responses of sadness or anger. He had unearthed hope, once shrouded in darkness. His daughters thrived, and he reveled in their shared joy. More than any courtroom victory, this was his triumph, shaping their lives amidst a landscape of betrayal. Yet deep down, he knew, as he tucked them in that night, that the world of deceit they had navigated wasn't fully exited. They were wading through murky waters, armed with resilience, heart, and a new family unit grounded in love. But soon, his thoughts drifted to what remained. He would need to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Amelia, who was still out there, crafting her next precarious move. Carson understood that sometimes the end was just a prelude, and that the real fight had only just begun. As the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, washing the world in a palette of orange and crimson, Carson found himself entrenched in a state of contemplation. The victory in court was sweet, better than he had ever imagined. But deep within him lay a tempest of unresolved emotions. Amelia was not just a figure of his past, but also a specter taunting him with uncertainty about his future. What would she do next? How far was she willing to go to regain control? Every day became a delicate balance of savoring new freedoms while anticipating the next curveball she might throw his way. Carson knew he had deftly secured a past victory, but battles often simmered. It was as if he could feel her presence coiling like a serpent in the background, silently watching him and their daughters. One afternoon, as Carson managed the daily chaos of parenting, while receiving calls from clients and conducting business meetings, his phone buzzed with a notification, a text from Amelia. He hesitated, a frown creasing his forehead, knowing it was probably not a cordial message. "Can we talk? I need to see the girls. I miss them." He pinched the bridge of his nose. The hurt simmered on the surface, raw and palpable. The reminder of the emotional whiplash she had inflicted on their family clawed at him. Responding was a choice fraught with consequence. He reminded himself about the emotional harm Amelia could inflict. She had proven herself toxic in every sense. Ignoring her plea was an easy choice, but the dagger twist came from knowing how important their daughters were to both of them. Could he deny her the opportunity to mend some of the damage? Would it even be worth the potential fallout? A few heartbeats later, he typed back with a firm, reserved tone, "How about a supervised visit at the park this Saturday?" The response was swift. "Fine. Thank you." That Saturday felt ominous, thick with tension. Carson steeled himself, wearing a calm mask that barely concealed his apprehension. At the park, the sun danced over the vibrant green grass. Laughter echoed around and warmth permeated the air. But Carson felt chilled. He arrived early, scoping out the nearby playground, ensuring there were enough people around to deflect any potential drama. When Amelia arrived, her demeanor quickly morphed into a show. Tear-stained cheeks, forced smiles, and summer attire that seemed intended to charm rather than comfort. As she approached, Carson saw the conflicting swirl of emotions painted on her face, pleading desperation cloaked in an effort to appear composed. "Now, hi, girls," Amelia chirped, kneeling to envelop Ellie and Sarah in warm hugs. He watched them lend her their innocent love, and for a fleeting moment, nostalgia struck him like a wave. Beneath it all, however, lay his righteous anger, simmering just beneath the surface. "Keep it short," Carson reminded her, almost inaudibly. "We're not here to rehash the past. The girls need time to adjust." She met his gaze with clarity coursing through her eyes, the vulnerability replaced by the mask of a mother that Carson had hoped would shift toward accountability. "I'm sorry for everything, Carson. You have to believe me. I want to be there for our girls." Her words hung heavy in the air, painted in insincerity he could nearly taste. "I don't trust you," he said plainly. "Your actions have consequences. Remember that." She winced, anger boiling beneath her surface. Carson watched as she fidgeted, fingers playing with her hair, a tell he remembered from their earlier days of fights and reconciliations. "I know I hurt you, but we can work through this," she pressed, her voice taking on that familiar rhythm designed to soothe rather than confront the truth. Carson stood firm, refusing to allow himself to be pulled back into the quicksand of their tumultuous past. "Okay, you can spend time with the girls, but that's it. They deserve a mother, but not the kind that lies and manipulates." Amelia stood tall, hurt flashing in her eyes, yet it was clear her expression was conflicted. You don't have to be this way. I won't spiral back into the past out of pity. The exchange crackled with unresolved tension. The girls, oblivious to the undercurrent of conflict, found joy in their mother's presence, running toward the playground. The innocent giggles felt like music to Carson's ears, providing a temporary balm amid the strife. As time passed, Carson kept his guard up while keeping a watchful eye on the interactions unfolding before him. Yet, he felt Amelia's gaze flitter over him throughout the afternoon, taking stock of the changes in him. She seemed steeped in a peculiar mix of anger and longing, but he remained determined not to be swayed by that intensity. Partway through the visit, Amelia knelt down to the girls, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You guys are having so much fun, aren't you? I miss you both so much." Carson stiffened as his heart momentarily softened. In that moment, the mother they loved so dearly stepped out from the shadows that had shrouded their family. But he also remembered the wreckage that had become of it. He took a step closer. "They miss you too, but they need consistency, reliability. Can you promise that? They cannot be the casualty of your decisions." Amelia looked up, a flicker of strained sincerity in her eyes, her mask slipping as her vulnerability cracked. "I can try." Carson operated on a singular principle now. No compromises. Trying isn't enough. The girls are not supposed to be a patchwork of broken promises. As the visit came to an end, the atmosphere thickened. Carson watched as the kids hugged their mother goodbye, yet he couldn't help but feel that this fleeting moment might carry echoes of false hope. Amelia turned to him, her voice soft. "Carson, another chance." "No," he interrupted, resolve swelling within him. "Be a mother to your daughters without dragging our past into the daylight." The weight of the conversation sunk into the air, hanging uncomfortably for a moment. He saw the pain flash in Amelia's eyes, but he also saw something else, a flicker of the woman he had once loved and believed in. But this wasn't a tale of rekindling. It was a narrative of survival. As he watched her walk away, Carson felt the rush of empowerment cornering him, pressing him forward. Alone, he had carved a pathway towards stability, one where he could protect his daughters, while scripting the dramatic arcs of his life moving forward. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, Carson felt lighter, invigorated by that small victory. Ellie and Sarah spun tales of the day at the park, laughter bouncing around their dining table. "Can we have a picnic next week?" Ellie asked, her eyes sparkling in the soft glow of the kitchen light. "Of course," he answered, heart swelling with pride. "Just the three of us." As he watched them, Carson understood he had the life he wanted, and no amount of chaos from Amelia could strip that from him. He had sacrificed the facade of a perfect family for the truth, a raw, unvarnished truth. But deep within, he braced himself, knowing that a larger storm brewed on the horizon. Amelia hadn't fought her way back into their lives to simply accept defeat. He could feel her struggle against the tides of social ostracism, just as he could sense her determination to reclaim her standing. In that realization lay another battle yet to be fought, but Carson was ready. He was a soldier now, navigating the complexities of love, resentment, and survival, firmly grounded in the notion that some battles demanded relentless perseverance. As the days turned to weeks, he braced himself for the impending confrontation, wary of how it would shape his journey further. The days following the park visit blended together into a relentless cycle of work and parenting. Carson settled into his role as a single father with renewed determination, carving out routines that nurtured Ellie and Sarah while safeguarding their emotional well-being. He explored the vibrant local parks, instituted movie nights with homemade popcorn, and even ventured into the chaotic world of arts and crafts, where glitter and paint became therapeutic escapes from their tumultuous reality. Yet beneath this picturesque facade, uncertainty simmered. Amelia had not made any further attempts to see the girls, vanishing into the shadows after their last encounter. Carson couldn't shake the feeling that she was plotting her next move, waiting to strike when he least expected it. Her absence, although a momentary relief, left him on high alert, as if the silence in their lives was deceptive. A few weeks later, his instincts bore fruit. Carson had just wrapped up a long day with clients when he received a chilling notification, an alert from his bank informing him of an unusual transaction attempt. He quickly logged in to assess the situation. His heart sank as he saw a significant withdrawal being attempted from a joint account, one that had a balance he had thought he secured. Rage surged through him. He immediately locked the account, preventing any further access. But the furious wave of emotions was accompanied by a creeping dread. This wasn't just about money. This was Amelia testing the boundaries he had set, probing for weaknesses in the armor he had constructed. Without hesitation, he dialed Linda, his attorney, who answered after only 2 rings. "You're not going to believe this," he said, striding through the hallway to his home office, the tension radiating from him. "It's about funds?" Linda asked, her tone sharpening, immediately attuned to the implications behind his urgency. "Amelia's trying to withdraw funds from our joint account, an amount that could severely impact both finances and her standing in the custody case." I locked it down. "Great instinct, Carson. I'll draft a formal cease and desist notice immediately. This can be used against her in court." Carson's heart raced at the thought of fighting back with a coordinated strategy. He imagined the courtroom filled with friends, family, and colleagues, witnessing Amelia grappling with the fallout of her actions. But the fear of her retaliatory instincts nagged at him like an itch he couldn't scratch. Later that night, as he tucked the girls into bed, he found himself restless with tension. He gently brushed Ellie's hair back from her face and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "I love you, sweetheart. Remember, you can always talk to me." Ellie opened her eyes a crack, her innocence tugging at his heart. "I love you too, Daddy." The mention of their love felt all-consuming, and as he turned to leave, Sarah's soft voice called out, "Can't we just have Mommy back?" The question sliced through him, heavy and inexplicably raw. "I know you miss her, honey," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "But sometimes, people make choices that aren't good for us. Your safety and happiness are the most important, and I promise we'll always be a family, just us." "Can we have more ice cream?" Sarah asked, her innocent diversion breaking the tension. "Absolutely," he chuckled. "Ice cream it is." That night, he fought to close his eyes, but sleep eluded him. Instead, he was consumed by a world where every possible future played out like a cinematic reel, each one tinged with uncertainty. And so began the sleepless nights, punctuated by the specter of Amelia's return, taunting his dreams. A few days later, while juggling daytime calls and trying to guide the girls in arts and crafts without major spills, his phone buzzed incessantly. The screen illuminated with an incoming call from an unknown number. Hesitating, he eventually answered, his instinct leaning towards caution. "Carson Reed?" a smooth voice inquired, straight to the point. "Yes. Who is this?" "Daniel. I work with Amelia. We need to talk." Carson's pulse quickened. "About what?" "She's made some choices that may alter custody arrangements. I think it's crucial we discuss specifics." Carson slid into a chair, bracing himself for what he sensed would be an attempt to manipulate the narrative. "I'm listening. We can't afford to leave things as is. Amelia has been struggling to maintain her finances since the courts ruled against her. She needs to find a way to stabilize her situation." "It's her choices that put her there," Carson interjected, his voice a low growl. "This isn't my problem." "It will be if it escalates," Daniel pressed. "Your girls' well-being should be paramount. Amelia loves them, and deep down, she wants to provide for them." Carson's anger flared. "Loving them doesn't mean manipulating my financial resources." "It's not about her, it's about the kids, and she's the issue." "Consider this a warning," he began, but Carson cut him off. "A warning? From someone who is attempting to magnify her issues through threats? I refuse to engage. Goodbye." The call ended, and Carson felt the weight of conflict pressing heavily upon him. Amelia circling back meant she wasn't done with their life. Her machinations were still at play. As he put the phone down, a torrent of worries crushed against the walls of his resolve. He dialed Linda again, who answered immediately. "Did you get my message?" "I did, but I just had a conversation with someone linked to Amelia. I think she's gearing up for a fight." possibly looking for a way to turn the custody arrangements back in her favor. Not without consequences. You hold the winning hand, Carson. Feeling emboldened by her confidence, Carson sat straighter. I won't give her an inch, but I can't shake this unease. I'm prepared, but what if she does try to retaliate? Stay vigilant. We'll prepare a protective plan, but don't hesitate. If you fear for the girl's safety or anything else arises, we'll take the necessary steps to ensure they're safeguarded. You're not alone in this. He ended the call with a renewed sense of clarity. The stakes had risen, and he would not falter. The following days saw him tightening his defenses, documenting Amelia's increasingly erratic behavior and alluding to her financial attempts. He laid the groundwork for a compelling case while protecting the rhythm of life he had crafted for Ellie and Sarah. As the week progressed, the whispers of uncertainty lingered. Carson couldn't shake the nagging sensation that Amelia would attempt one last gambit before surrendering, fueled by desperation. When she approached through a new ally, he sensed she was still entangled in a web of her own making, desperate to reclaim what she had lost. On a quiet Friday morning, while sipping his coffee and preparing for yet another chaotic day with the kids, the doorbell rang. His heart raced as he approached the door, surprised to find Amelia standing on his doorstep. She looked fragile yet defiant, emotions dancing beneath the surface, a tsunami threatening to crest. "Can we talk?" she implored, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. Carson's body tensed, caught between treating her with the distance she deserved and the compassion that stirred unexpectedly. Unease settled into his veins. "What do you want?" "Just to explain myself." He leaned against the doorframe, staring her down. "We've been down this road. What do you have to say that I'd want to hear?" "Things have changed. I realize my past mistakes. I just want a chance to be present for our daughters," she murmured, voice trembling. "You think it's that simple? You severed that bond when you stepped outside our marriage. You have to understand there are consequences." Her eyes glistened. "I'm willing to change." "Change requires more than just words, Amelia," he warned, taking a step back, wanting to shield his daughters from another potential storm, the betrayal still too raw to consider. "I just want them to know their mother isn't abandoning them, that I care." "Care shouldn't be defined by what is convenient for you," Carson shot back, drawing the line all too clearly. Underneath the surface, Carson sensed that this was not just a plea for forgiveness. It was her last chance to upend the stability he had fought so hard to build. Amelia's desperation shined through the veneer of sincerity, reminding him that this game was far from over. "You have until the next court appearance to demonstrate real change if you want to maintain a semblance of a relationship with them," he replied, finally letting her in. "But any attempt to undermine my role in their lives will not be tolerated." Her silence lingered, an unspoken agreement hanging in the air that shifted the dynamics between them yet again. Although the moment unfolded like soft sushi rolls, delicately intricate but wholly unsettling, Carson remained firm, heart racing but implacable. As she turned to leave, Carson felt a wave of resolve wash over him. This battle was still being fought in the shadows, but he would not falter again. He had already laid the foundation of his new life, one that was built around the love he shared with his daughters, fortified by his determination to protect them. In the weeks to come, he would prove that he was unwavering. Their journey through the labyrinth of betrayal was only getting started, but Carson was prepared for whatever storm Amelia unleashed. He stood resolute, ready to confront the reality of what lay ahead. The days following Amelia's unexpected visit were turbulent, filled with a mix of anxiety and determination. Carson remained vigilant, aware that her renewed presence in his life could ignite a series of misguided attempts to manipulate their circumstances. As he carved out new routines for himself and the girls, he maintained a fortified wall around their little family, unwilling to allow any chinks in his armor. The anticipation of the next court date loomed heavily on him, each passing day gnawing at the fragile balance he'd established. He had poured every ounce of love and energy into ensuring Ellie and Sarah felt stable and secure, without the chaos of Amelia's antics seeping into their lives. However, in the back of his mind, He understood that Amelia's stark desperation would lead to further measures. Then the day arrived. The day that would reveal everything. The courtroom felt imposing, its walls closing in around him as he sat next to Linda, reviewing the papers and evidence she had meticulously prepared. He could sense the tension in the air, both from Amelia's side and his own. The room buzzed with anticipation, the kind that hinted at lines drawn between the past and the present, and the unease hung like a storm cloud. As Amelia entered the courtroom, her demeanor was strikingly different from the last time he had seen her. She wore a carefully curated expression, the mask of troubled remorse attempting to shield her from the shades of reality. The dress she wore was incongruously formal for the occasion, as if she were trying to armor herself against the judgment awaiting her. Carson knew how manipulation worked. It was written all over her face. With a soft nod and barely masked bitterness, she settled into her seat, acknowledging Carson's presence only as mere formality. The judge entered shortly after, and the proceedings began. The room was filled with murmurs, but Carson stayed focused. Every moment in that space held weight. He could feel the stakes rising. Linda began her opening statements, articulating the magnitude of Amelia's actions, the financial manipulation, the deceit, and the emotional scars laid bare upon their daughters. She positioned Carson as a devoted father, focused on creating a stable environment while painting Amelia as erratic and unreliable. Each point she made resonated deeply, sparking images of their shattered life. When it was time for Carson to take the stand, a steely resolve settled within him. He felt a swell of responsibility as he recounted his perspective on their marriage, the love that had faded, and the painful awakening to reality. It became clear that my focus had to shift to the well-being of my children, he explained, his voice unwavering. I fought for them. I fought for stability when all seems lost. Amelia remained still, absorbing his words. For a moment, their eyes met, and he could almost see a flicker of understanding, or perhaps rage, scrolling across her features. Yet he pushed it aside, focusing on the truth he had fought so hard to construct, refusing to be defined by her choices. As the day unfolded, it became clear that Amelia was unraveling. Linda presented evidence of Amelia's reckless spending, illustrating not only her financially irresponsible nature, but revealing the inconsistencies in her parenting. Carson could feel the mounting tension as Amelia's defenses crumbled under scrutiny. Did you think about how your actions would affect your children? Linda pressed, her tone sharp. Did you consider how being reckless impacts them emotionally? Amelia fumbled for words, her mask slipping just a little as the reality of the scrutiny set in. I was trying to stay afloat, she stammered, glancing at the judge. I wanted to maintain some connection with them. And resorted to deceit? Linda pressed further. Is that your definition of connection? Every word hammered home the emotional devastation born out of Amelia's choices. Carson could feel the courtroom's energy shift. What had once felt like a battle between his past and her future was transforming into a much-needed revelation, a clarion call for justice. Throughout the session, Carson maintained unwavering composure. He had come to learn that the only way forward was through uncompromising honesty. When finally Amelia attempted to call into question his ability to parent single-handedly, claiming he was emotionally detached, the hurt felt piercingly personal. Carson, you've become cold, she declared, her voice rising in pitch under the tension. Why do you refuse to give me another chance? But Carson's emotions were not a weapon in her arsenal. They had become his shield. That's the issue, Amelia. Trust has been irrevocably broken. It's going to take far more than words to mend what's been shattered. The gavel of truth struck again as Carson conveyed the philosophy he had built in the chaos of their disillusionment. I've become the father my daughters need, who will prioritize their happiness over any semblance of normalcy you wish we had maintained. In the quiet that followed, the weight of honesty sunk into the courtroom, palpable and heavy. Carson watched as the judge scribbled notes, his expression inscrutable. The moment felt like both liberation and confrontation, the chains of past grievances finally loosened. The next few hours unfurled in a blur as closing arguments came to a head. Linda articulated the case with fervor, bolstering Carson's position as the steadfast provider who cherished their daughters while grounding Amelia's erratic behavior within the context of their family's turmoil. As the judge called for a recess, Carson stood in the corridor, each second seeming to stretch as he awaited the final ruling. He felt the swirling emotions of possibility mixing with dread. Would Amelia come back stronger than ever, more desperate to reclaim the life he had shielded himself from? He caught sight of her lurking nearby, her expression a mix of vulnerability and defiance. "I want you to understand that I do care," she whispered, her mask crumbling further into the anonymity of the hallway. "That day at the park wasn't mere manipulation, it was truly my desire to be there for our girls." He met her gaze squarely, unflinching. "You think it's that simple? You've weaponized love. That isn't caring, Amelia. That's selfishness. Know that it's too late for attempts at emotional reclamation." As the judge returned to call for the verdict, Carson's heart raced. The gavel struck, and with it came the finality of a chapter written in shadows. Custody will remain primarily with Carson Reed, given the disturbing patterns of financial recklessness and emotional volatility demonstrated by Amelia. There will be supervised visits and a clear statement that any emotional distress to the children must cease immediately. A sense of relief washed over Carson as the words sank in. Yet he remained cautious. The gavel's echo signified the support of his determination, but it also sparked a realization of the battles ahead. Amelia's reaction was immediate, the shock palpable as she stared ahead. Rage bubbled beneath her surface, and Carson sensed the turmoil brewing behind her eyes. As he gathered his things and left that courtroom, he felt the seeping doubt still enveloping Amelia. This was her reckoning, but it would not be without consequential aftermath. Winning this battle had created a war within her, a fight against herself and the choices she made. Yet for Carson, it symbolized a new beginning, a way to forge ahead with Ellie and Sarah, undeterred and focused on laying down the foundations of a life free from shadows. And as they stepped into the uncertain light of a new day, Carson affirmed one truth. He would protect his daughters with unwavering resolve, come what may. In the aftermath of the custody ruling, the air felt thick with unspoken tensions. Carson left the courtroom, a mixture of relief and caution racing through his veins. He had emerged victorious, but the battle was far from over. He sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, feeling the warmth of the sun outside juxtaposed against the chill in his heart. Amelia's reaction haunted him. There was fury brewing beneath her calm facade, and he worried that this defeat might prompt her to lash out in unforeseen ways. The next few weeks unfolded quietly at first. The girls, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents of their family dynamics, thrived under the firm structure Carson had established. He threw himself into activities with Ellie and Sarah, each day infused with joy that felt more vibrant than it had been in a long time. They spent weekends at the park, explored museums, and even took spontaneous trips to the beach, where giggles echoed over the crashing waves. Yet even in those moments of happiness, unease nipped at the edges of his psyche. He remained acutely aware of Amelia's presence. Her lingering scent of perfume haunted their home in the recesses of his mind. And though she had been granted only supervised visits, it felt as if she was a storm gathering on the horizon, the quiet before thunder rolled in. One late afternoon, he received a phone call from Linda, piercing through his blissful existence. "Carson, we need to discuss Amelia." Her voice held an edge of urgency. "What's happened?" Panic tightened his chest. "I received word that she's seeking to appeal the custody ruling," Linda explained. "She's claiming she was pressured during the court session and wants to challenge the decision. This could escalate things significantly." Carson felt the floor drop beneath him. He had braced himself for Amelia's reactions, but an appeal threatened to uproot everything he had fought for. "What can we do?" prepare for a new legal battle. We need more evidence stating her instability, especially regarding her recent financial situation. If we can demonstrate that she hasn't changed, we can further solidify your position. Determined not to be blindsided again, Carson began documenting every interaction with Amelia, capturing her erratic behavior since their first confrontation. He scoured through emails and text messages, compiling proof of her emotional instability, a quintessential and constant pattern. As he pieced together the narrative, he found clarity. He wasn't just battling Amelia, but fighting for peace for himself and their daughters. Meanwhile, Amelia's supervision during visits initially unfolded with guarded hope. Whenever she came to see the girls, he maintained a strict vigilance, monitoring conversations and interactions, making sure she didn't stray into manipulative territory. And while encounters were often strained, the real threat lingered behind every polite smile, every forced laugh that echoed through the air. One afternoon, during a visit at a local playground, Carson watched closely as Amelia knelt to speak to Ellie and Sarah. But beneath the surface positivity, he sensed something was off. A tightness gripped his gut, and he could feel the tension radiating from her every movement. Soon they huddled together, whispering conspiratorially. Ellie glanced back at Carson, her innocent eyes wide with confusion, which churned his stomach further. "Girls, let's go to the swings," he called, hoping to redirect their focus. But before he could intervene, Amelia looked up, a dangerous glint in her eyes. "You don't have to listen to your dad. He doesn't understand. We can have our own secret fun." Carson's heart sank. "That's not okay, Amelia," he interjected, his voice firm. "This isn't a game. The girls need to know you can't just say things like that." Amelia straightened, innocence replaced with irritation, a mask slipping to reveal frustration. "You don't get to dictate how I parent when I'm with them. I just want them to have fun." "Fun doesn't come at the price of manipulating their perception of reality," Carson shot back, anger boiling beneath his calm demeanor. "You want to point out your love, but your actions don't match those words." The encounter turned bitter as Amelia's temper flared. "You make this impossible. You're suffocating me." "I can be a good mother," Carson held firm, the resolve strengthening within him. "Proving you care isn't just about words and surface-level fun. It's about stability and honesty. I won't let you jeopardize that just because you're struggling." The visit ended shortly after, with Carson walking away feeling torn. He'd enabled a vile chasm of conflict they had yet to navigate, one that had once brought warmth and comfort, but now morphed into a battleground of emotions. Returning home, Carson reflected on the ongoing war waged within everyone he'd loved. His heart raced as he contemplated what the next round of embroilment would bring. The looming appeal added weight to both the emotional toll and the financial strain this battle would instigate. Days transformed into a blur of meetings with Linda, prepping defense strategies to bolster their case against Amelia. As they prepared, Carson recognized how the unpredictability of her actions created an ongoing wave of anxiety, contrary to the triumph he fought for in the courtroom. Yet inside him, a faint ember of hope smoldered. The anticipation of a new chance at peace drove him forth. When the day of the appeal hearing arrived, Carson entered the courthouse with a sense of polished determination. He'd spent countless hours honing his narrative, combing over the evidence he'd amassed, fueling his fire to protect his daughters. The courtroom felt heavier this time, the stakes undeniably higher. He sought the strength to articulate just how much he had been compelled to defend against Amelia's relentless pursuit. As he took the stand, Carson felt a wave of calm wash over him. He began recounting the most recent visits, the lessons learned, and the emotional turmoil lingering beneath the surface. "I want nothing more than for my daughters to understand love in a safe and nurturing environment. Amelia's pattern has shown me that she has yet to prioritize their emotional safety." The questions from Linda reinforced the pillars of Carson's arguments, each one crafting an irrefutable portrait of his devotion and commitment to creating an emotionally sound foundation for Ellie and Sarah. His determination shone brightly, illuminating the courtroom with every articulation of love. Then came the moment when Amelia took the stand, her demeanor faltering as she faced the scrutiny of the judge and the witnesses. She began speaking of her desire to reconnect and demonstrate that she could change, her voice trembling. "I need my daughters to know I love them. I can do better." The judge listened as Amelia spoke, but Carson could see the cracks in her facade widen ever so slightly as she stumbled over her words. He understood her desperation, her yearning for reconnection, but he would not allow the delusions of past warmth to undermine the truth unveiled before them. When Linda cross-examined Amelia, the questions cut to the core of her credibility. "Given the circumstances surrounding your financial instability, can you assure the court that you can provide a stable environment for your daughters?" Amelia's confidence wavered. I thought I could manage," she faltered, her voice trailing. "But I'm willing to learn. I'm committed to changing." The judge's gaze turned sharp, reflecting the weight of Amelia's past and the cautionary tale of her choices. "Change must be continuous, not based on the moment. That's my primary concern." The ruling came days later, an echo of the prior decision, reinforced by the weight of evidence from both Carson and Linda. The judge dictated a sustained primary custody arrangement while providing Amelia only limited supervised visitation, reinforcing the need for ongoing support and stability for the girls. As Carson emerged from the courtroom once again, a profound sense of purpose coursed through him. He had carved a path forward, not just for himself, but for Ellie and Sarah too. Amelia's inability to demonstrate ongoing emotional commitment would remain a barrier. With every court date, he fortified their world bit by bit, gathering not just evidence, but emotional fortitude. Carson understood now more than ever that this journey demanded resilience, an unwavering bond built on trust, hope, and determination. As they celebrated their victory with ice cream that night, Carson felt an uplifting sense of joy as the girls laughed and shared stories, obliviously basking in the light he had fought to protect. He had transitioned from a battlefield to a sanctuary, focused on building bridges instead of walls. And somewhere within, he knew the struggle was far from over. But he was ready for anything Amelia might throw his way, because he had one thing she lacked: unwavering resolve, forged through the fires of choice. It was a new beginning adorned with unfiltered love, and that was worth fighting for every single day. In the weeks following the court ruling, Carson found a renewed sense of stability in his life. The time spent with Ellie and Sarah blossomed into moments filled with laughter, learning, and connection. They embraced their little family unit more fiercely than before, fortifying their bond against the lingering shadows of Amelia's unpredictable presence. Every day became an act of reclamation, not just of his life, but of his happiness. Despite this newfound tranquility, the undercurrents of anxiety remained. Carson kept a watchful eye on the calendar, prepared for Amelia's anticipated appeals and any potential emotional confrontations. He focused on nurturing the girls' understanding of their emotions, ensuring that they had a safe space to express their fears, their joys, and everything in between. "And that's the spirit!" Carson cheered as Sarah presented her latest crayon drawing, a vibrant depiction of a sunny day at the park. "What do you call this masterpiece?" "Mommy and us!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up with joy. Carson swallowed hard, the weight of the mention crashing down momentarily. "It's beautiful, honey," he replied, forcing a smile, though his heart clenched. He had encouraged open communication, and in doing so, he prepared himself for whatever feelings the girls would voice, a task he believed would strengthen their emotional intelligence. Ellie, sitting cross-legged beside her sister, observed the drawing and chimed in. "Mommy should come back to play with us, Daddy. She loves us." Carson took a deep breath, his mind swirling. He needed to weigh the significance of their emotional needs against the reality of Amelia's actions. "We all love each other, but sometimes love means understanding that people can be hurtful," he explained gently, careful to navigate the complexities of their feelings. "Right now, your mom is working on some things. She needs to learn how to show that love without hurting people." The girls nodded, though their eyes flitted with confusion. Carson smiled, knowing their innocence was a fragile thing that he cherished. It was essential to set the stage for ongoing conversations while protecting the girls from the weight of the truth. A few days later, an unexpected notification pinged on Carson's phone, a message from Amelia. Tension coiled in his chest as he opened it. "Can we meet? I want to talk about the girls. I need to explain my side, please." His first instinct was to ignore it, but he had promised himself that he would remain open to dialogues about co-parenting, even if they were difficult. After much deliberation, he texted back, "We can meet, but only in public. And the girls won't be there." The confirmation came swiftly. "Fine. Thank you." The meeting was set for the following Saturday at a local coffee shop, neutral ground where he hoped to maintain control over the conversation. As he walked into the bustling cafe, anxiety prickled at his skin. Holding his breath, he spotted Amelia seated in a far corner, her shoulders hunched as she stirred her coffee nervously. He took a seat opposite her, maintaining a physical distance, unwilling to let any emotional warmth cloud his resolve. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Let's get to it," Carson replied, keeping his tone steady. "You wanted to talk about the girls." Amelia took a deep breath, finally raising her eyes to meet his. "I'm trying, Carson. I recognize that my past choices have hurt everyone. I just want a chance. A second chance to be a better mother," she pleaded, the desperation thickening the air around them. Carson remained unmoved. He had seen this fragile vulnerability before, and it never ended the way she intended. "You say that, but your actions don't match your words. Your manipulation and reckless choices put you here." She swallowed hard, leaning forward slightly. "I want to prove that I can change. I've started attending therapy, working on my finances. It's all part of my commitment to parenting better." The words struck a chord, yet he couldn't let himself be swayed. "Actions speak louder than intentions, Amelia. You need to show not just me, but our girls, that you can be that better mother." "I need more time," she insisted, fingers fidgeting with the cup's rim. "I want to earn their trust back. I miss them." "I'm sure you do," Carson said, his voice firm but measured. "But remember, you've already broken that trust, and it's going to take more than just words to fix the damage." "Is there any way we can work towards more visits?" Amelia pressed. "I want them to see me, to know that I'm fighting for them. I love them." Carson met her gaze, unwavering. "That requires consistency, stability, and accountability. Right now, I need to see you demonstrate a clear commitment to that. If you can show me that you're truly working towards change, then maybe we can discuss additional visitation." Her expression shifted from pleading to frustration. "This feels like blackmail," she snapped, anger flaring beneath the veneer of her vulnerability. "It's not blackmail. It's about the safety and well-being of our children. If you genuinely want to be part of their lives, then you need to understand that this is non-negotiable." Amelia fell silent, her anger simmering just below the surface. Carson had seen similar outbursts before and knew how to weather this storm. "Fine. I'll do what I need to do," she finally said, her voice low and laced with bitterness. "But this isn't over." Carson stood resolute as he prepared to leave. "No, Amelia, it is just beginning. For both of us. You have the power to change your narrative, but that requires your dedication. You don't just get to waltz back into our lives. You have to earn your place." As he walked out of the cafe, Carson exhaled deeply. He felt a mix of relief and tension, knowing he had maintained control during the conversation. Though her anger lingered in his mind, he had set boundaries that would protect Ellie and Sarah, and himself. In the days and weeks that followed, Carson focused on creating a sanctuary for the girls, reinforcing their routines and nurturing their spirits. He spent evenings diving into bedtime stories, teaching them about emotions through playful activities, and encouraging their individuality. Yet Amelia's persistent presence in their lives loomed ominously. One afternoon, he received a text message that turned his stomach. Amelia would petition for another custody hearing, claiming that he was alienating her from the girls. The message made his blood boil, but he steeled himself. This would not be a simple hurdle. It was a calculated move, a desperate attempt to regain control in the narrative she had spiraled out of. Carson confided in Linda, who reviewed the message with a dismissive wave. "This is an example of her manipulation, Carson. She can claim whatever she wants, but you have proof of your commitment to parenting. We'll craft your response and shut her down." His resolve hardened as he prepared for yet another round in this ongoing saga of emotional turmoil. The custody hearing loomed like an impending storm, and he would be ready. As the day approached, Carson devoted himself to organizing evidence while reinforcing his commitment to the girls. In his heart, he knew they deserved a stable future, unmarred by the uncertainties of Amelia's actions. When the hearing arrived, Carson sat once again in the courtroom, facing not just Amelia's desperate attempts, but the reality of a situation that demanded fortitude from every facet of his being. As they moved through the motions, he could feel the tension in the air, again fortified with the knowledge that the reckoning with Amelia's choices was far from over. From this point on, Carson vowed to remain steadfast and unwavering, ready to confront whatever awaited them in the chapters ahead. The court ruling had been a small victory, but the true battle lay in the consistent dedication to protecting his daughters and ensuring they thrived. Prepared this time, Carson steeled himself for the fight and embarked on a renewed journey that would lead them all toward healing, support, and the undying commitment to the love they shared. As Carson sat in the courtroom for the new hearing, the previous weeks loomed heavily on his mind. Amelia's recent attempts to depict him as the villain consolidated his resolve to protect Ellie and Sarah at all costs. He glanced around the room, noting the familiar faces that had become spectators in this fight. The judge, the stenographer, and the court officers moved through their roles with practiced familiarity, a machine fueled by emotions, turmoil, and the hopes of fractured families. The courtroom's atmosphere was stifling, a blend of anticipation and tense silence. Carson felt his heartbeat quicken as Amelia entered, clad in another carefully chosen outfit that screamed of her desperation to present a polished image. The corners of her mouth twisted into a tight smile. It was a facade he had seen all too often before. "Let's make this quick," the judge said, setting the tone for the proceedings. "We have been over this ground before." Amelia's lawyer stood up, brimming with confidence, and launched into a narrative that spun Amelia as a devoted mother, simply trying to reconnect with her children. Carson listened intently, observing how the defense painted Amelia's recent actions as attempts at change. Yet beneath the surface, he sensed the duplicity, the strategic ambiguity designed to manipulate perceptions. "Your Honor," Amelia's lawyer stated, "my client is willing to undergo any measures necessary to regain custody, including therapy and financial counseling. She understands the gravity of her past mistakes." As her lawyer spoke, Carson felt a swell of anger combined with determination. He realized they were attempting to rewrite history once again, to frame Amelia as the victim rather than confront the consequences of her actions. He had documentation, texts, and conversations prepared for this exact moment, all designed to counter the narrative being spun against him. After Amelia's lawyer concluded, it was Carson's turn. He stood gathering his thoughts as he gripped the edge of the witness stand, ready to confront the accusations head-on. "Your Honor, while my ex-wife may present herself as a changed woman, I have evidence that contradicts her claims." He proceeded to lay out the timeline of Amelia's instability, citing instances of erratic behavior, financial recklessness, and emotional manipulation during her visitation. He detailed specific examples where Amelia had attempted to undermine the girl's trust in him, which left his heart feeling heavy. "I have worked tirelessly to create a stable environment for Ellie and Sarah. I want nothing more than for them to feel safe and loved. Their well-being has always been my priority," he stated firmly, looking directly at the judge, ensuring his sincerity was palpable. Amelia's expression hardened as Carson continued, outlining his dedication to their daughters, school activities, constant emotional support, and guidance through the lingering confusion surrounding their parents' separation. Each point resonated deeply within Carson as he spoke from the heart, determined to illustrate his role as a father while exposing the disturbance Amelia's actions caused. Yet, he was also aware that realities could shift radically in these courtrooms. As he sat back down, the tension in the room turned palpable. He glanced across the aisle at Amelia, seeing a flicker of desperation and resentment filled with the layers of complexity. The hearing continued with cross-examination from Amelia's attorney, who tried to dismantle Carson's credibility. "You claim to be the better parent, but can you really guarantee that your daughters will be completely shielded from any emotional scars from this experience?" Carson swallowed deeply, fighting to keep his composure. "I am not a perfect father, but I am committed to nurturing my daughters in a safe environment. I have worked hard to address any insecurities they may feel. I encourage open conversations about emotions, something I didn't have growing up." "That's admirable," the attorney pressed. "But wouldn't you agree that by denying Amelia consistent access, you might be contributing to their emotional distress?" "I'm not denying her access. I'm ensuring it's safe and appropriate until I can see a sustained change. It's not just about visits. It's about their emotional safety," Carson asserted, frustration creeping into his voice. He wouldn't let the narrative twist away from the facts. As the cross-examination continued, Amelia's demeanor shifted from defensiveness to overt fury. She jumped to her feet multiple times, attempting to interject and rebut Carson's statements, but the judge firmly instructed her to remain silent. Carson could see her unraveling, driven by the desperation to reclaim control over a narrative that had long eluded her. Yet through it all, he remained resolute, anchoring himself in the values he had established through months of careful thought and consideration. Finally, it was Amelia's turn to take the witness stand. She fumbled for words, casting her eyes downwards, before addressing the room. "I know I've made mistakes, Your Honor," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I've worked on my issues. I love my girls, and I want to be a part of their lives." But as she spoke, Carson could see the cracks in her composure widening. Her performance felt scripted, devoid of the genuine emotion he would have wanted for her. When the judge probed for specifics on how she intended to demonstrate real change, it became evident her answers were vaguely constructed and lacking substance. "Can you provide details on your therapy?" the judge asked, pen poised to record her responses. "I'm working on it," Amelia replied evasively, shifting in her seat. "I'm still trying to find the right fit. But I promise I'm committed." The judge leaned back, a skeptical expression crossing his face. "And what will you do if the therapy doesn't yield the results you expect?" A flicker of panic erupted in her eyes. "I'll just keep trying. I love them." In that moment, Carson saw the thinly veiled threat beneath her words. He recalled the emotional manipulation and chaos she had previously inflicted upon their family. To him, it was evident that Amelia's outbursts were not the product of love, but rather a powerful manifestation of desperation. As the hearing continued, Carson gleaned from the tension that the judge was not buying into Amelia's performance. After all the evidence had been presented, the room fell eerily silent. The judge concluded his remarks, stating that he would take some time to review the evidence before making a final ruling. The tension felt like an electric charge, pulsating in the air as the room emptied. Carson and Linda exchanged knowing glances. This was not over yet. Over the next few days, anxiety washed over Carson in waves. He juggled his responsibilities while continuously checking for updates regarding the ruling. The uncertainty gnawed at him, amplified by the echo of Amelia's outbursts, reminding him of the relentless emotional turmoil their family had endured. When the judgment finally arrived in the mail, time seemed to freeze. Carson opened the letter, scanning the lines with his heart racing. The ruling reinforced primary custody with Carson, but it also mandated Amelia to attend counseling and complete several parenting programs. Relief flooded through him. This would provide a template for Amelia to demonstrate her commitment, but it also meant ongoing vigilance. Carson had to prepare for unexpected hurdles and ensure that the plan implemented would guarantee the safety of Ellie and Sarah, while allowing Amelia the opportunity to improve. As Carson sat with the girls that evening, he took a deep breath, feeling weighed down yet buoyed by hope. He gathered them close, sensing the comfort and strength that encapsulated their little sanctuary. He was ready to embrace the evolving dynamics, knowing that the journey of healing and change lay ahead. "Can we have a family movie night?" Ellie asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Of course. What do you want to watch?" he asked, smiling as he thought about the laughter and joy that would fill the air. "Frozen," Sarah exclaimed, bouncing on her knees. Settling onto the couch, Carson turned on the movie and wrapped an arm around each of his daughters, comforted by their warmth and laughter. Even amidst the uncertainty of the future, he felt anchored in their love, the foundation of his new beginning. For now, Carson was content to embrace the little moments with Ellie and Sarah, focusing on the bond they shared, rather than letting the shadows of the past dictate their present or future. He'd continue to remain vigilant and unyielding in the face of Amelia's attempts to reclaim control. Together, they would navigate this tumultuous journey, and the challenges ahead would only solidify the love and resilience that bound them closer together. That night, as the credits rolled, Carson clung tightly to the belief that courage and love would guide them through anything that lay ahead.